Today we're going to be talking about our new FAQ service. To understand our FAQ service, we need to understand a little bit more about how Google connects different topics. If you have a page about apples, for example, how does Google know that you're talking about Apple the fruit or Apple the technology company? And the answer to that is entities. Google has its own natural language processing algorithm that reads content and assigns entities based on how these words are connected. For example, Apple the fruit will have connected entities such as health, food, and fruit. And Apple the technology company will have connected entities such as iPad, technology, and iPhone. So Google is able to read our content and understand the concept or the context based on what connected entities there are. We are in a fortunate position that we have access to Google's NLP algorithm. So we can run our own content and your content through the algorithm and uncover what Google thinks our content is about, and more importantly, what entities we feel are missing. So going back to our Apple example, if we have a piece of content that talks about apples and we have the entities health and food, but we're missing entity fruit, we can then fill in that gap. Now, on its own, that's not really actionable. Okay, you have an entity missing and that entity is fruit. How do you fill in the gap? And we've come up with a methodology of connecting entities to questions. And in doing so, we mine Google's own people also asked box. So we've developed this internal formula to connect entities that are missing or that need expanding to people also asked boxes, and we mine questions from Google. So that's essentially what this whole service does. It's connecting up entities that Google want to see and then turning those into actionable insights and actionable data that we can turn into real content in the form of questions, hence the FAQ service. So how does the service work? It's broken down into two parts. The first part is to go through your existing content and update your existing content with an FAQ section at the bottom. If it already has an FAQ section, then it will be to expand on that. And how this works, we run your top pages through the Google NLP algorithm to determine which entities Google thinks are associated. We then use those, as I mentioned, to mine the people also asked box for hyper-related questions. These questions are then added to your existing pages, along with all of the correct FAQ schema markup, so that's important. And this ensures that Google understands that it's Q&A content, and it also activates the FAQ box, the FAQ content box on the SERP results, especially for content that's already ranking on page 1, which means more real estate for you in the SERPs. The other method that we can use is to add new supporting content. So you already have a good foundation of content, and now you really want to delve in and let Google know that you are an authority on this subject and you want to create lots of topical relevancy. So what we then do is we run your whole website through the Google NLP algorithm to determine what entities Google thinks your site at a whole is all about. And then we collate all of the primary questions that are connected to the entities that are there. And then we turn those into mineable assets that we then go and mine the people also asked box. So what we end up with typically then is a primary question and then several sub questions of that primary question. And what this does is it allows us to answer all of the fringe questions or all of the topics that that we know Google wants answered, and also answer them in an in-depth way because we're answering subtopics or sub-questions of a primary question. Now, why does this work and why is this such a good thing? So this works because essentially we are using Google's own technology to reverse engineer exactly what they want and exactly what questions they want us to show and cover in order to deter or to show that we are an authority on the subject. We also know that 80% of the questions that appear in the people also asked box are eligible for featured snippets. So this service is a featured snippet goldmine. By adding all of these new Q&A style content and adding the correct schema markup, we're just enabling our site and we're prepping our site to be in a position to win tons and tons of featured snippet, and going forward potentially to win lots of search snippets. There's a new search schema that's coming soon. I think it's in beta test at the moment, but essentially people ask They ask Siri or ask Alexa questions all the time, and we're just future-proofing all of our content because we have lots of question and answer-based content. What makes this service great? The questions that we uncover tend to be very long tail, obviously, and this means that your competitors are very unlikely to be answering the questions directly. And we can see this exact thing in Google. So if you go to the People Also Ask box and you click on one of the questions, typically the snippet that Google shows as the answer isn't the exact text that's on the site. They've mangled together a couple of words from a couple of different sentences or put together two sentences. And if you search for the exact question on that page, typically it's not there. So we know that Google wants to see answers for these, but the sites that they're selecting, they don't answer these questions directly, and that's because they're too long tail. The other reason that they're probably not answering these questions directly is traditional keyword research tools such as Ahrefs or SEMrush don't have these questions in their database. To give you an example, we recently ran 650 questions through Ahrefs and only 60 of them were in their database. Most site owners typically tend to use third-party tools like Ahrefs or SEMrush for their research, and because their questions are not in there, that's probably why they're not targeting them specifically. So we've got a massive competitive advantage in targeting these directly. That's a quick overview of the service. In terms of how it works once you order, so you place your order through the site, you'll get an onboarding email. In that onboarding email will be some instructions on data to provide to us. And then from there will be a link to book your onboarding call with a member of the team. And there we will talk through which strategy is best for your site, whether it's to update your existing content or whether it's to add new supporting content or whether it's a mixture of both. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. But if not, hope to see you on the onboarding call.